Hittite Mythology. The epic battle between Storm God Tarhunt and Serpent Illuyanka. Chapter 1. The land of the Hittites. The land was ancient, long before men first carved their homes into the mountains of Anatolia. Rivers had cut their paths through stone, forests had whispered for countless ages, and the winds had sung over plains that stretched to horizons without end. Yet, above all these forces of nature, the people of the Hittites believed in powers greater still, the gods who shaped the world, who ruled the skies, the seas, and the unseen depths beneath the earth. At the center of this divine order stood Tarhunt, the storm god. His voice was thunder. His breath was the wind that raced across valleys and mountain passes. His hands hurled lightning, as if they were spears forged in celestial fire. To mortals, he was both a protector and a terror. 4 storms could nourish the fields with rain, or strike them barren with hail and flood. To the gods, however, Tarhunt was more than a ruler of weather. He was the defender of balance, the guardian of cosmic order against the creeping shadows of chaos. The pantheon of the Hittites was vast. The sun goddess of Arena shone with her radiant crown, blessing kings and warriors. The earth itself was honored as a living, breathing being, mother of all harvests and creatures. But none was more feared and revered than Tarhunt. In him the people saw the strength of the mountains and the fury of the skies. Priests carved his likeness upon stone tablets, a mighty figure wielding a hammer, standing atop 2 striding lions. His temples echoed with hymns that praised his storms as signs of divine favor. Or yet, in the shadows beyond these sacred halls, there stirred another power, where Tarhunt embodied order. Another force whispered of unmaking. Deep in the waters that lapped against the edges of the world, born from ancient chaos before the gods themselves, slumbered the serpent dragon known as Illuyanka. It was said that its coils were so vast they could wrap around mountains, its fangs sharper than any spear forged by men, and its breath a searing poison. While Tarhunt reigned above, Illuyanka seethed below, dreaming of the day it would rise. The people told stories around their fires of how chaos and order were bound in endless struggle. Each storm rolling across the horizon was not merely weather, but a sign of Tarhunt waging war against forces unseen. Every crack of lightning was his weapon striking, every roll of thunder his voice roaring in defiance. They knew the world balanced upon a knife's edge. Should Tarhunt falter, should the serpent awaken, darkness might swallow all. Kings invoked Tarhunt before battle, raising their swords toward the sky. Farmers prayed to him as they sowed their seeds, begging him for gentle rains instead of ruinous floods. Children grew up hearing of his might, and in their games they mimicked his hurling of lightning, striking down imagined beasts. Tarhunt was not merely a god, he was the very heartbeat of the Hittite world. But even gods are not free of fate. There came whispers among the pantheon that Illuyanka stirred in the deep. The great serpent had tasted the stillness of ages, but hunger gnawed at its soul. Order disgusted it. The harmony of gods and mortals alike was an insult to the chaos from which it had been born. In secret, its eyes opened beneath the waters, glowing like embers in the abyss. The rivers swelled, forests shook, and strange storms rose unbidden. The signs could not be ignored. The serpent was waking. Tarhunt felt it first, a shiver that passed through the currents of the sky. He stood atop his mountain throne and looked into the horizon. The clouds gathered in unnatural shapes, twisting into coils. Lightning flashed without his command. He knew then that Illuyanka was near. Chaos stirs, he spoke, his voice echoing across the heavens. And I must answer. The other gods grew uneasy. Some urged caution, for Illuyanka was older than memory itself, a creature of the first darkness. Others demanded war, believing Tarhunt's storms were the only force strong enough to resist such evil. Tarhunt listened, but in his heart he knew the truth. This battle was inevitable. He descended among his worshippers, disguised in human form. The people of the Hittite cities looked upon him without knowing, yet felt a presence in their bones. A sudden storm rolled across the plains as he walked, rain lashing down like silver spears. Farmers shielded their crops, soldiers raised their faces in awe, and children whispered that the storm god was near. In every drop of rain, Tarhunt carried their prayers, and in their faith he found strength. Yet faith alone would not be enough. Illuyanka rose with a roar that shook the very roots of the world. Rivers overflowed, spilling across the land. Forests bent beneath a poisonous wind. The serpent's body writhed upward, black scales glistening, coils vast enough to eclipse valleys. Its eyes gleamed with hatred for the gods who had dared impose order upon its chaos. Tarhunt stood upon his chariot of storm clouds, his lions roaring as they pulled him into the sky. In his right hand burned the thunderbolt, in his left the hammer of storms. His eyes blazed as he looked upon Illuyanka, and for a moment silence held the earth. Beast of shadow, Tarhunt thundered, you shall not unmake what has been forged. By the storms and by the will of the gods, I will cast you down. Illuyanka's laughter was like the crashing of oceans. Stormbringer, it hissed, you are but a child before me. Your order is a prison. Your light is a lie. I shall tear your heart from your chest and swallow it whole. Then all shall return to the void from whence it came. The air split as the first clash of storm and serpent shook the world. Lightning met scale, thunder met roar, and the skies themselves trembled. Mortals fell to their knees, temples cracked, rivers boiled. For this was no mere storm, but the opening of a war that would decide the fate of gods and men alike. And though Tarhunt stood tall, though his hammer and thunderbolts struck with fury, deep within him lingered a shadow of doubt. For Illuyanka was vast, older than the mountains themselves, and the battle had only just begun. Chapter 2. Birth of Illuyanka. Before the mountains rose to pierce the sky, before the seas carved their endless paths, the world was only chaos. Darkness and water mingled, formless and eternal. From this primal abyss came beings older than memory, creatures of shadow and hunger, born not to create but to consume. Among these ancient horrors, one endured when others fell into silence. Illuyanka, the serpent dragon. Legends tell that Illuyanka's body stretched longer than rivers, its coils capable of encircling the world itself. Its scales shimmered like obsidian in moonlight, each harder than iron. Its eyes burned like molten embers, a cruel fire that saw not beauty nor order, but only prey. And when it opened its jaws, the earth trembled, for its fangs dripped venom that could sear stone and wither forests. Unlike the gods, who drew their power from order and worship, Illuyanka thrived on chaos. It fed on storms unbound, on rivers unleashed, on the wild terror that gripped mortals when night fell without stars. For ages uncounted, wrapped in its coils, dreaming of the day when order would weaken and chaos would rise again, The Hittites believed that when Ilyanka stirred, the signs would ripple across the world. Rivers would rise without rain, forests would burn without flame, and strange winds would howl across the plains, leaving men sleepless with dread. Priests marked these omens in clay tablets, warning that the serpent would awaken whenever balance between gods and mortals was broken. It is said that Ilyanka was not born alone. In its earliest days, other serpents of shadow swam with it in the black waters, each a terror in its own right. But one by one, they perished, devoured by Ilyanka itself. For it sought not companionship, but dominion. It consumed its kin, growing larger and more terrible, until no creature of chaos remained to rival it. Thus, Ilyanka became the sole heir of darkness, the embodiment of the void's hunger. When the gods first shaped the world, Ilyanka recoiled into hiding. The heavens blazed with new light, the seas glittered beneath the sun, and mountains stood firm as pillars of order. The serpent despised these things, yet it was cunning. To challenge the gods in their strength was folly, so it slumbered, waiting for arrogance, for weakness, for pride to blind the children of heaven. And so the world prospered. Men built cities, tilled fields, raised children, and lifted their voices in praise to Tarhunt and the gods. But beneath the earth, in the endless waters, Ilyanka dreamed. It dreamed of storms torn from their master's grasp. It dreamed of temples falling, their stones crushed beneath coils of darkness. It dreamed of a sky emptied of light, where only shadow reigned. When it finally stirred, the world shuddered. First came the rivers, swollen and raging, though no rain had fallen. Entire villages drowned, swept away in floods that came from nowhere. The priests read these signs and trembled, for they knew no storm of Tarhunt's hand behaved so. Then came the winds, screaming down from the mountains with a voice like laughter. Crops bent and broke, forests split, and travelers whispered of shadows moving in the clouds. At last, fishermen on the coast swore they had seen it, a coil rising from the sea, vast as a mountain, glistening black in the sun, before vanishing again beneath the waves. The stories spread like wildfire. Mothers clutched their children. Soldiers sharpened their blades in vain. And in the temples, the priests cried out to Tarhunt, begging him to rise. Yet Tarhunt already knew. From his throne of storm, he had felt the shifting of the skies. He had seen lightning crack in patterns not his own, wild and unruly. He had tasted in the wind the bitter breath of venom. He had heard in the thunder a mocking echo that was not his voice. Ilyanka had risen. The gods gathered in fear. Some urged Tarhunt to strike quickly before the serpent grew stronger. Others counseled patience, warning that Ilyanka was no mere beast but a force of the void itself. Yet all knew one truth: no god but Tarhunt could face it, for only the storm god's fury could match the serpent's chaos. Still, even Tarhunt felt a weight upon his heart. He remembered the ancient tales, how Ilyanka had devoured its own kin, how even gods of older ages had fallen before it. To face such a foe was not victory assured, but war without certainty. Yet what choice was there? Order is not kept by hesitation, Tarhunt declared, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. If the serpent rises, I shall rise higher. If it strikes, I shall strike first. The balance of the world is mine to defend, and I shall not yield. So he prepared. He summoned clouds from the edges of the earth, weaving them into a chariot vast as the horizon. Lions of lightning roared and pawed at the ground, eager for battle. His hammer blazed with stormfire, his bolts of thunder sharpened to pierce even the serpent's hide. The heavens themselves darkened in anticipation, for a war unlike any before was about to begin. And beneath the waters, Ilyanka uncoiled. Its body split seas as easily as a knife through cloth. It rose higher and higher, its coils writhing, each larger than a mountain's base. Its eyes burned like twin suns of hate, glaring toward the heavens, where Tarhunt prepared his host. Storm God, the serpent, hissed, its voice rolling like waves crashing against cliffs. You sit upon a throne of lies. Your order is a cage, your light a fraud. I was before you, and I shall be after you. When your thunder fails, when your hammer falls silent, the world will return to me. Tarhunt lifted his hammer high, lightning dancing across the sky. Beast of shadow, you are nothing but hunger. I am storm, I am order, I am the hand that holds chaos at bay. Strike if you dare, for today the world shall see who truly rules it. Thus the stage was set. Heaven and earth trembled. Mortals huddled in fear. The gods watched in silence. Above, Tarhunt's storm darkened the sky. Below, Ilyanka's coils blotted out the sea. The first war cry had not yet sounded, but already the world held its breath. Clouds gathered like armies, layer upon layer of shadow rolling across the horizon. Lightning crackled, restless and fierce, searching for release. Beneath them, the seas writhed, as if in pain, waves towering higher than the masts of ships, foaming white as they crashed against the shores. At the heart of this storm stood Tarhunt, the storm god, lord of thunder and lightning. His chariot of clouds blazed with divine fire as his lions pawed at the winds. His hammer shimmered with stormlight. The serpent dragon rose from the abyss. The beast emerged in a fury of water and shadow. Its eyes burned with hatred, twin fires that sought to devour all creation. When it spoke, the earth shook. You are but a child wielding stolen thunder. Today, I will strip it from you and return this world to the chaos from which it was born. Ilyanka, creature of shadow, you are hunger without end, a void that devours but never creates. I am the storm, the balance, the breath that gives rain to fields and strength to men. The seas answered with waves, and then, with a roar that shook the bones of mountains, Tarhunt charged. Mortals who watched from distant cliffs shielded their eyes, blinded by its fury. Yet, when the light faded, Ilyanka still stood. One of the storm lions roared in pain as venom burned its flank, sizzling like acid upon its fur of lightning. With both hands, he swung his hammer, striking downward with the force of the heavens. The serpent shrieked, the sound splitting the air like 1,000 storms unleashed at once. Its coils thrashed, battering the seas into chaos. Instead, with terrifying speed, it surged upward, jaws gaping wide. Tarhunt raised his hammer for another strike, but too late. Ilyanka's fangs closed around him. Lightning crackled, thunder boomed, but the serpent's jaws did not relent. With a violent wrench, it tore from Tarhunt what no god could live without, his eyes and his heart. Thunder fell silent. The storm that had once obeyed Tarhunt's command broke apart into chaos. Rain falling in wild torrents, wind howling without direction. The storm god staggered, blinded and hollow, his strength bleeding away as though the sky itself had been wounded. Ilyanka reared back, triumph blazing in its ember eyes. It held aloft, its grisly, prized heart still beating, his eyes still alight with fading storm fire. With a hiss of victory, the serpent devoured them, swallowing the essence of the storm god into its abyssal belly. Tarhunt fell, his chariots scattered into clouds, his lions vanished into wind. The hammer slipped from his grasp, tumbling through the storm until it vanished into the sea below. The gods who watched from their thrones gasped in horror. The sun goddess veiled her light in grief. The earth mother trembled, her fields withering beneath sudden drought. Mortals lifted their eyes to the heavens and despaired, for the storm god protector, bringer of rain, wielder of thunder, was defeated. Waves surged higher, crashing upon coasts with merciless force. Poison seeped into rivers, darkening the waters. Broken, heartless, sightless, he lay hidden among mountains, sheltered by the earth itself. The gods mourned him, and men wept, for they believed the age of storms was ended, that chaos had triumphed. Though his heart was stolen, his fury still burned in the silence of his soul. He swore then, though no god heard, though no mortal knew, this defeat would not be the end. The storm god had fallen, but storms, though silenced, always return. Chapter 4. The Humiliation of the Storm God. The storm god lay broken. Once his thunder had rolled across the heavens, once his lightning had split the earth with awe and terror. Now robbed of his eyes and heart, he was but a shadow of his former might. The mountains hid him in their silent embrace, covering his wounded form in mist and stone. The world had never known Tarhunt so diminished, so emptied of his divine essence. The gods gathered in sorrow and unease. The sun goddess wept golden tears that scorched the earth, while the mother of earth herself trembled, her harvests failing beneath grief. The other deities whispered among themselves, their voices heavy with fear. "If Tarhunt is fallen," said one, "what hope have we against the serpent? If Ilyanka holds his heart," said another, "then his power is swallowed into chaos. None may retrieve it." A third muttered darkly, "Perhaps the age of storm is ended. Perhaps the serpent's dominion is fated." No god dared speak aloud the thought that weighed most heavily upon them. Without Tarhunt, the balance of the world could not stand. Chaos would rise unchecked. Mortals would be left to suffer beneath floods and poison winds. Order itself would wither. The skies grew wild without his command. Lightning came in strange bursts, burning villages and forests without pattern or mercy. Rains poured endlessly, then ceased altogether, leaving fields cracked and barren. Rivers swelled with venom from Ilyanka's coils, their waters killing fish and cattle alike. Men cried out to the heavens, lifting sacrifices, begging their storm god to return. But only silence answered. In his hidden refuge, Tarhunt heard these cries, though he could no longer behold them with his eyes, nor feel them with his stolen heart. Their voices reached him like echoes through stone, faint and fading. He longed to answer, to rise again, but when he tried to summon his storms, only a hollow breath of wind stirred. He, the great defender of heaven and earth, had been struck down. His foe had not merely wounded him, but humiliated him, stealing the very core of his being. He could not bear the eyes of his fellow gods, nor the despair of mortals. He lay in silence, his once mighty body trembling with weakness, and knew himself undone. It was then that a voice came to him, gentle as falling rain. "Father," it whispered. From the shadows stepped his daughter, radiant yet sorrowful. Some say she was Inara, goddess of the wild, and protector of mankind. Others call her by no name, for the tale is older than any scroll. But all agree she was brave of heart and loyal beyond measure. She knelt beside her father, laying her hand upon his broken chest. Though no heartbeat stirred there, she felt the embers of his will still smoldering. "Do not yield," she said. "You are Tarhunt, storm of heaven. If you fall, all falls." "I am hollow," he answered, his voice a rasp of thunder fading into silence. "The serpent has taken my heart, my eyes are gone. What storm remains in me is but a whisper. I cannot rise. Then I shall rise for you," she said. Her gaze burned with determination. "If Ilyanka has your heart, then I will go where you cannot. I will bind myself to the serpent if I must, and through me your power shall be restored." At this, Tarhunt stirred, shaken by both love and dread. "No," he warned, "the serpent is cunning, cruel. To stand near it is to invite death. I will not see you sacrificed for my weakness." But his daughter only smiled, though tears rimmed her eyes. "Strength is not in victory alone, Father. It is in the will to endure, to fight even when all seems lost. You taught me this. Let me now teach it to you." Tarhunt bowed his head, his pride pierced more deeply than by any fang of Ilyanka. Here he was, a god brought low, while his child bore courage greater than his own. The humiliation cut deeper than his wounds, that he, who once shook the world, could not act, while another must risk all in his stead. Word of Tarhunt's fall spread among mortals as well. Farmers abandoned their fields, believing the rains cursed. Warriors cast aside their spears, for no storm would bless their battle. Children no longer played at hurling thunder, but whispered of a serpent that had devoured their god. Despair crept like a sickness through the land. Priests climbed the steps of crumbling temples and lifted their voices in lamentation. "O Tarhunt, where are you? Has chaos triumphed? Have you forsaken us?" Their sacrifices of grain and wine withered on altars, untouched by divine flame. For the first time, faith trembled, uncertain if their storm god yet lived. Meanwhile, Ilyanka reveled in triumph. It coiled across the seas, its vast body crushing ships and swallowing islands whole. From its jaws spewed venom that darkened the waters, leaving behind deserts of lifeless sand where once green valleys thrived. In its belly, Tarhunt's heart pulsed, his stolen eyes glimmered with trapped stormlight. With each beat, the serpent grew stronger, feeding on the power of the god it had undone. The gods cowered, mortals despaired, and Tarhunt, blind and hollow, lay hidden, weighed down not only by his wounds, but by the bitter sting of humiliation. Yet within that humiliation, something else began to stir. For though his body was broken, though his might had been devoured, Tarhunt still felt the weight of the world pressing upon him. He could hear the cries of farmers begging for rain, the voices of children calling for light in the darkness, the prayers of warriors swearing oaths in vain. Each voice was a spark, faint yet burning, and together they formed a fire that no serpent could swallow. Tarhunt clenched his empty fists. His breath came as a whisper of wind, faint but unyielding. "Though heartless, I shall yet rise. The storm may be broken, but storms return. And when I rise again, the serpent shall fall." His daughter placed her hand in his and nodded, her eyes fierce. The path ahead was perilous, but hope was not lost. For in the depths of humiliation, a greater resolve had been born. Chapter 5. The Daughter's Sacrifice. Upon the high mountains, where Tarhunt lay in hiding. The winds whispered secrets of sorrow and resolve. His daughter, radiant yet solemn, gazed upon her father's broken form and knew that the fate of gods and mortals alike now rested not upon his strength, but upon her courage. The heavens were dark, veiled with clouds that once would have bent to Tarhunt's command. The earth was thirsty, fields cracked and barren. In the valleys, children cried for bread that would not come, while rivers carried only venom from the coils of the great serpent. Each sound of despair struck the daughter's heart like iron upon an anvil. She turned to Tarhunt, who sat cloaked in shadows, blind eyes empty, chest hollow where his heart had once thundered. "Father," she said softly, "the world withers while we hide. You cannot rise, not yet. Ilyanka holds what was taken. To face him is to fall into his coils. Then I will go," she declared. Her voice, though gentle, rang with the steel of destiny. "I will descend into the serpent's lair. I will bind myself to him, if that is the only path." "No," he said fiercely. "You are my blood, my light. To send you into his jaws is to deliver you to ruin. I would rather fade into shadow than see you devoured by chaos." But she knelt before him, placing her hand upon his trembling arm. "Father, the storm is not only lightning and thunder, it is also rain that nourishes the fields, wind that stirs the seeds, clouds that shield the earth. You are more than fury. You are life itself. If you fade, the world fades with you. I cannot stand idle while mortals and gods cry out in vain." Tears welled in Tarhunt's blind eyes, though no heart beat within his chest to drive them. "What you speak is sacrifice," he whispered, "a burden no daughter should bear." She smiled sadly. "All children bear the weight of their fathers in some way. Let this be mine. If the serpent must be deceived, let him believe I am his ally. If a bond must be forged, then I shall forge it with my blood. Through that bond, I will find what he has stolen and return it to you." The mountains shuddered at her vow. Even the winds grew still, as if all creation listened. Tarhunt, broken as he was, felt shame and pride mingled like storm and sun. His own daughter would walk into the lair of chaos unarmed, and he could not stop her. At dawn she departed, clothed not in armor but in mortal raiment, for to stand as goddess was to invite suspicion, until she came to the dark waters where the serpent dwelled. Ilyanka, vast as mountains, coiled within his lair. His eyes glimmered like burning emeralds, and venom dripped from fangs that had slain gods. When he beheld her, he laughed, a sound like stones grinding in the deep. "Daughter of the fallen storm," he hissed, "why do you come to me, unarmed, unbidden?" She bowed her head, masking the fire in her spirit. "Because the storm has ended," she said. "The world belongs now to you. My father hides, broken and powerless. I will not share in his ruin. I come to serve the one who has triumphed." Ilyanka narrowed his eyes, suspicious yet curious. He asked, "Because I am not fool enough to cling to a withered branch," she answered. "You are the river that sweeps all away. If I bind myself to you, I may yet endure. If I remain with my father, I will perish in his shame." The serpent's laughter shook the cavern. "Very well, serve me, and you shall be spared." Thus began her sacrifice. Ilyanka drew her into his court, where shadows reigned and venom dripped from the stones. He wrapped his coils about her, not as a lover, but as a jailer, binding her to his will. Yet she endured, speaking sweet words, hiding her revulsion. She sang songs of praise to his might, feigned awe at his cruelty, and wove herself into his trust. In time, she bore him a child, half serpent, half divine. The boy grew swift and strong, his eyes gleaming with stormlight, though he had never seen the skies. He loved his mother, though he felt the serpent's blood coil within him, pulling him toward darkness. Tarhunt's daughter wept in secret, torn between love and sorrow. She kissed her son's brow and whispered prayers to the winds, asking that he might choose the path of light when the day of decision came. She knew her sacrifice was not merely her body, but her very bloodline, bound now to chaos. They were hidden deep within the serpent's coils, treasures guarded by poison and shadow. None could steal them by force, but perhaps, just perhaps, the child she bore could one day bridge the divide between storm and serpent. She gave her father hope where once he had none, though he knew nothing of her suffering. And though the serpent triumphed in pride, he did not see that the seed of his downfall had already been planted within his very blood. For sacrifice is not only loss, it is the soil from which destiny grows. Chapter 6. The Son's Choice. The child of storm and serpent grew swiftly, as if the blood of two worlds hastened his rise. From his father, Ilyanka, he inherited the strength of coils and the cunning of shadows. From his mother, he inherited the fire of the heavens, a spark of divinity that no serpent's venom could extinguish. He was a youth of strange beauty. His hair gleamed with dark strands that shimmered like scales beneath the torchlight. His eyes burned with twin flames, one green like the serpent's venomous gaze, the other gold like lightning caught in amber. When he laughed, it was the echo of rivers. When he grew angry, the winds stirred, though no storm clouds moved above. Ilyanka looked upon the boy with pride, for never before had the serpent spawned an heir so mighty. "You are mine," he said, his coils tightening around the cavern. "You will carry my dominion across the ages. Through you, chaos shall reign eternal." Yet the boy was restless. Though he had never seen the open sky, he dreamt of it each night. He dreamt of thunder rolling like drums, of rain falling like tears of joy, of lightning blazing across clouds. These visions stirred his blood and left him trembling at dawn. He spoke of them to his mother, who held him close and kissed his brow. "Those dreams are not illusions," she whispered. "They are your inheritance. You are not only serpent, my son. You are also storm." Confusion warred within him. But father says the storm is ended. He says the storm god hides, broken and ashamed, that there is no power left in thunder, only in the coils of chaos. Tears filled her eyes, but she did not let him see. "Your father speaks only what he knows, but storms are never ended. They rest, they return. You must one day choose which blood guides you, the blood of coils or the blood of clouds." The boy's heart ached at her words, for he loved them, both his mother, tender and steadfast, his father, fierce and commanding. To betray either was to wound himself. Yet destiny does not allow children of two worlds to linger in indecision forever. One night, as Ilyanka slumbered deep within his coils, the mother led her son through hidden paths of the cavern. The air grew colder, sharper, until they came to a hollow chamber where two treasures glimmered in the dark. A pair of radiant eyes and a heart that pulsed with stormlight. The boy stared in awe. "What are these?" "They belong not to your serpent father," she said softly, "but to your true father, Tarhunt, storm of heaven. These are his heart and eyes, stolen when he was broken in battle. Without them, he is but a shadow. With them, he may rise again. The boy's golden eye flared, but the green one narrowed with suspicion. Why do you show me this? Do you ask me to betray the one who raised me? The one who calls me son? I ask nothing, she said, though her hands trembled. I only show you truth. One day you will stand between serpent and storm. The choice will be yours. The boy pressed his hand against the beating heart, and for a moment thunder rolled faintly in his veins. He saw visions, a mighty god wielding lightning, mortals bowing in gratitude, the skies rejoicing. Then he turned his gaze to the serpent's shadow, and the visions shifted. Endless seas swallowed by coils, mortals screaming, gods trembling in fear. He fell to his knees, torn between the two. Days passed, and the boy grew more conflicted. Ilyanka boasted of his future dominion, showing him how rivers could be poisoned, how mountains could be shattered by sheer force. This is power, the serpent said. It is yours by right. But when the boy slept, storms filled his dreams, and he heard a voice calling through the darkness. It was deep, weary, yet unyielding. My son, the voice said, though he did not yet know whose voice it was. Return to me what was stolen. Restore the balance. Do not let chaos consume all. The boy awoke in sweat, his chest heaving. He wanted to ignore the voice, but it returned each night, louder, more insistent. At last, he went again to his mother, desperate. Tell me the truth, he begged. Whose son am I truly? Am I of the serpent or of the storm? She cupped his face, tears falling freely now. You are of both, but you must choose which world to serve. If you choose serpent, you will reign in darkness, feared by all. If you choose storm, you may save the world, but the price will be heavy. He trembled. What price? Her voice broke. Your life, my son. The blood of serpent and storm cannot endure together. If you restore what was stolen, your own strength will be undone. To save the world, you must give yourself. The boy staggered back, horror in his eyes. You would ask this of me. I would ask nothing, she whispered. I would keep you safe, hidden if I could. But fate is not mine to command. It is yours. For many days he walked alone, wrestling with the choice. Love for his serpent father bound him to chaos. Love for his mother bound him to light. But above all, he felt the cries of mortals in his dreams, the farmers begging for rain, the children crying for bread, the warriors calling for justice. Their voices pierced him deeper than fangs or thunder. At last, beneath a sky he had never seen, he made his choice. He would return what was stolen. He would restore the storm. And if it meant his end, so be it. Chapter 7. The return of the storm. The mountains groaned as dawn broke, and the heavens remained heavy with clouds that refused to move. Deep in his cavern of shame, Tarhunt lay blind, hollow, and silent. Yet on that morning he stirred. He did not know why, but a tremor of forgotten thunder shivered through his veins. Somewhere, far away, destiny had begun to awaken. From the shadows came footsteps, firm, unhesitant. Tarhunt raised his head, sightless though he was, and listened. Father, said a voice, steady yet trembling with youth. The storm god's breath caught. Though blind, he felt the presence of blood close to his own. This was no serpent's hiss, no mocking tone of Ilyanka. This was something new, half familiar, half alien. Who calls me father? Tarhunt asked, his voice hoarse as dry wind. The boy stepped forward, golden and green eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. "I am your son," he said, "born of storm and serpent. I have come to restore what was taken from you." At his words, Tarhunt's chest, though hollow, seemed to quake. He stretched out his trembling hands until they touched the boy's shoulders. Power lingered there, though mingled with shadow. "My son," Tarhunt whispered, "I thought the serpent had devoured all that was mine. How is it you stand before me?" "Through my mother's courage," the boy said. "She bound herself to Ilyanka so that I might be born. Through her, I have learned the truth of who I am, and through me, you will rise again." The boy opened his hands. In them burned treasures long lost, a pair of radiant eyes that flashed with lightning, and a heart that thundered with storms. Tarhunt fell back in awe. His breath came in gasps, as if the very air had turned to fire. "You carry them, my essence, my strength. They are yours," the boy said. "But to return them to you, I must let go of my own life. This is the price of balance." The storm god trembled. "No, you are young, my blood and my hope. I cannot take your life to save my own." But the boy only smiled, and it was both serpent and storm in one expression. "The world cries out, 'Father,' mortals starve, gods despair. If I must give my blood to end this darkness, then let it be so. I am not afraid." Tears welled in Tarhunt's sightless eyes. For centuries, he had wielded storms without hesitation, yet here he faltered before a sacrifice too great to bear. But the boy pressed the heart into his chest, and at once thunder roared. Lightning coursed through Tarhunt's veins, searing away his weakness. The mountains shook, clouds split with light, and for the first time since his defeat, the heavens trembled at the return of the storm god. Then the boy placed the eyes upon his father's face. With a blinding flash, sight returned, sight not only of the world, but of all its cries and wounds. Tarhunt beheld rivers poisoned, fields ruined, temples abandoned, mortals bowed in despair. He also beheld Ilyanka, coiled in triumph, his venom spreading unchecked. And finally, he beheld his son, kneeling pale, his strength ebbing away. For each beat of the heart that thundered within Tarhunt's chest, the boy's own pulse grew weaker. His sacrifice was unfolding. "No," Tarhunt whispered, "not like this." The boy lifted his head, his mismatched eyes burning one last time. "Rise, father, rise and strike. The storm belongs to you again." With a cry that split the heavens, Tarhunt surged to his feet. Lightning burst from his hands, thunder rolled from his chest, winds howled across the earth. The gods, who had hidden in fear, looked up in awe. Mortals lifted their heads from despair and wept in joy. The storm god had returned. But in his triumph, Tarhunt felt the weight of his son's fading life. He gathered him in his arms, lightning flickering like tears. "Forgive me," he whispered. "You should have lived to see the skies, to dance in the rains. Instead, you give your life to restore mine." The boy smiled faintly, his voice weak but clear. "Through me, you rise. Through you, I endure. Strike the serpent, father. End his reign." With that, his body grew still, and only the faint echo of serpent blood lingered in his features. Tarhunt lifted his son's body high, and his cry shook the firmament. "Ilyanka," he roared, "hear me. I am risen. I am whole. Come forth and face the storm you thought ended." The skies erupted. Rain poured upon the earth. Lightning forked across mountains. Thunder roared like 1,000 drums. Mortals fell to their knees in worship, knowing the battle had come. Ilyanka stirred in his cavern, venom boiling, coils lashing in rage. The serpent hissed, his voice shaking valleys. So the storm crawls back from shadow. So be it. Let us finish what was begun. And thus, with heart restored and eyes blazing, Tarhunt strode forth. The storm had returned, and with it the promise of battle that would shake heaven, earth, and sea alike. Chapter 8. The Feast of Deception. Ilyanka stirred in the depths of his lair, coils shifting with restless fury. The thunder above told him what he had long denied. Tarhunt lived. The storm god, once humbled, now raged again, his lightning lashing across the heavens. The serpent hissed, venom dripping into the seas. So, the crippled storm dares rise again. Very well, let him come. My fangs will drink him dry once more. But Tarhunt did not charge blindly this time. He had known humiliation, had tasted the bitter ash of defeat, and had learned from it. Rage burned within him, yet it was tempered with cunning. For the serpent's strength was not only in his coils, but in his arrogance. Pride, Tarhunt thought, could be bait. Thus, he devised a stratagem. He sent word to the gods and 2 chosen mortals, commanding them to prepare a feast, a grand banquet, unlike any the world had seen. Tables were laden with roasted meats and baskets of bread. Rivers of wine flowed from great amphorae, and torches burned high into the night. The scent of food and drink spread across the valleys, sweet and irresistible. The gods gathered first, hesitant yet hopeful. Why feast when war stirs? Some whispered. But Tarhunt only said, the serpent's downfall will come not by storm alone, but by snare. Tonight we do not feast for joy, but for victory. When the banquet was ready, Tarhunt lifted his voice, loud as thunder, so that even Ilyanka heard. Great serpent, he called, you boast of your triumph, but where is your courage? Do you dare face the storm god at his table? Come, eat, drink, prove your dominion, not with coils in darkness, but with presence in the light. Ilyanka heard, and laughter shook the caverns. A feast, he hissed. What is this but desperation? The storm would lure me with mortal tricks. Yet the thought gnawed at him. His pride, swollen with past victory, demanded he show himself. If I do not come, the gods will say I fear him. If I do come, all will see I still reign. So the serpent rose. His vast body tore through forests, his scales grinding stone to dust, his hissing heard across the plains. Mortals fled in terror as he passed, yet the banquet fires still burned, and the storm god still waited. When Ilyanka arrived, the ground quaked beneath his coils. He gazed upon the tables, spread with wine and meat, upon gods and men watching with bated breath. Very well, he said, his tongue flickering. I will sit at your table, Tarhunt, and when the feast is ended, I will coil you in death. Tarhunt inclined his head, masking his fury. Then eat, serpent, drink, and prove your strength. The feast began. Ilyanka devoured roasted oxen whole, tore through loaves of bread like dry leaves, and drank rivers of wine from bronze cauldrons. The gods watched in silence, awe and fear mingled. The serpent laughed, drunk on his own hunger and on the pride that swelled with every bite. See how your feast feeds me, storm god. Your own table fattens your doom. But Tarhunt only smiled grimly, for the wine was strong, brewed not by mortal hands, but by divine craft. Cup after cup, Ilyanka drank, and the fire of it burned through his veins. His coils, once swift as rivers, grew heavy. His eyes, once sharp as emerald flames, grew clouded. His hiss turned sluggish, his laughter slurred. At last, Ilyanka staggered, his massive head lolling. He tried to rise, but the weight of his drunken coils pinned him. "What trickery is this?" he growled, his tongue thick with stupor. Tarhunt rose, his eyes blazing, lightning flickering at his fingertips. "No trick," he thundered. "Only your own pride, serpent. You feasted not upon my table, but upon your ruin." At his signal, the gods leaped forth. Ropes woven from divine sinew and chains forged of stormlight were hurled upon the serpent. Ilyanka thrashed, but his strength was dulled by the wine. The coils that once crushed mountains now tangled upon themselves. He roared, venom spilling from his jaws, but the gods tightened the bonds until he was bound fast. Mortals, too, rushed in with nets and spears. Emboldened by the sight of their storm, God restored. They shouted praises, their voices rising like a tide. "Tarhunt, Tarhunt, storm of heaven." The earth shook with Ilyanka's fury, yet his power waned. The banquet had become a trap, the feast a cage. Tarhunt stood before his enemy, his heart beating strong, his eyes blazing with stormlight. He raised his voice so all gods mortals, serpent, could hear. "Once you humbled me, Ilyanka. Once you stole my essence and cast me into shadow. But storms return. You feasted on pride, and pride has undone you. Tonight your coils shall be broken, and the balance restored." Ilyanka hissed weakly, his vast body straining against bonds he could not break. "Do you think binding me ends chaos, storm god? Even if I fall, the shadows will rise again. Chaos is eternal." "Then let chaos learn fear of the storm," Tarhunt replied. The sky split with thunder. Lightning struck the ground in blazing arcs. The bound serpent writhed, but the gods held firm. The banquet fires flared brighter, as though the heavens themselves bore witness. The stage was set. The serpent was bound, the storm god restored, and the final reckoning lay at hand. Chapter 9. The last battle. The night of the feast had ended in thunder. Ilyanka lay bound in chains of stormlight and divine sinew, his coils thrashing against the earth. Forests toppled, mountains cracked, rivers overflowed as the serpent writhed in fury. Yet the bonds held firm, and the world trembled as if it awaited the clash of two primordial powers. Tarhunt stood tall at the edge of the banquet ground, his eyes blazing once more with lightning, his heart thundering within his chest. The air around him swirled with winds and sparks, the storm itself eager for vengeance. Yet beneath his power there was grief, for the cost of his return was still fresh in his soul. The life of his son, given freely so the storm might rise again. The gods gathered behind him, their faces grim. Mortals, too, watched from afar, trembling at the sight of the great serpent bound, their hopes pinned upon the storm god's hand. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the hiss and roar of Ilyanka. At last, Tarhunt raised his voice, and his words rolled like thunder across the heavens. "Serpent of chaos, twice have you risen against me. Once you humbled me, and once you mocked the world with your dominion. But storms return, and balance must be restored. Tonight, we end this war." Ilyanka's emerald eyes flared, venom dripping from his fangs. Even bound, his voice shook the mountains. "You think me defeated, storm god? Chains cannot hold chaos forever. Even now, my power seeps into the waters, into the winds. When I break free, I shall coil around the heavens themselves and crush them into dust." You cannot slay what is eternal. Tarhunt lifted his spear, forged of lightning itself, and the heavens split with flame. Perhaps chaos is eternal, he said, his voice steady, but so too is the storm. One will always rise to face the other, and tonight storm shall prevail. With that, he hurled his spear. The bolt of lightning struck Illuyanka's body, searing through scale and flesh. The serpent roared, a sound that shook the valleys and sent mortals falling to their knees. His coils lashed, snapping trees and tearing furrows in the earth, but the chains held, though they strained with the force. Tarhunt advanced, lightning bursting from his hands, thunder rolling with every step. Each strike tore new wounds into Illuyanka's vast body, scorching scales and spilling black venom that hissed upon the earth. Yet the serpent fought back, even bound. He spat streams of poison that blackened the ground, and with each lash of his tail, storms of dust and stone rose against the gods. The battle raged, sky and earth alike consumed in fury. Lightning clashed against venom, thunder against hiss, storm against coil. The gods added their strength, tightening the bonds, chanting words of power to hold chaos fast. Mortals raised their voices in prayer, crying out for the storm to triumph. But in the midst of battle, Tarhunt's heart wavered. For though Illuyanka was bound, he was not alone. The storm god saw, in the serpent's thrashing coils, the shadow of his son, the boy who had carried stormlight within him, who had chosen sacrifice over survival. Tarhunt's hand faltered for an instant, and grief struck deeper than any fang. Illuyanka seized upon it. His eyes blazed, his voice hissed with venom and mockery. You mourn, storm god. You mourn the child that was mine as much as yours. You weep for serpent's blood spilled in your name. How will you strike me down, knowing part of me lives within him? Tarhunt's thunder cracked, torn between rage and sorrow. The storm around him flickered, uncertain, as if the heavens themselves shared his grief. But then he remembered his son's final words. Rise, father, strike the serpent and his reign. His grief hardened into resolve. Lightning blazed from his eyes, thunder rolled from his chest. He raised his spear once more, and his voice split the sky. My son chose storm over serpent. His sacrifice binds me, not you. His blood is the price of balance, and I will not let it be in vain. With a cry that shook heaven and earth, Tarhunt hurled his spear again. This time, it struck Illuyanka's heart. Lightning exploded through the serpent's body, bursting from his eyes, his jaws, his tail. Illuyanka writhed in agony, his roar shaking the seas, but the chains held him fast as the storm consumed him. The gods shouted in triumph, their voices rising above the thunder. Mortals lifted their hands to the sky, tears streaming as rain poured down upon their faces, rain that was no longer venom, but life-giving water. Illuyanka's coils slackened, his hiss fading into silence. His vast body trembled, then fell still, smoke rising from his charred scales. The serpent of chaos was slain. Yet, even in death, his words lingered. Chaos, eternal, will rise again. Tarhunt stood over the fallen serpent, his chest heaving, lightning still flickering across his skin. Victory was his, but it was not triumph that filled him, it was sorrow. He looked to the heavens, rain mingling with his tears, and whispered, My son, this victory is yours. The storm raged on, not in fury, but in mourning. Thunder rolled like a dirge, and lightning flared like torches at a funeral. The last battle was ended, but its price was carved forever into the heart of the storm god. Chapter 10. The death of Illuyanka. The battlefield lay in ruin. Trees shattered, rivers poisoned. The mountains themselves cracked beneath the fury of gods and serpent. Smoke curled into the heavens, and rain poured from storm clouds, heavy with sorrow. In the center of this devastation, Illuyanka's massive form sprawled upon the broken earth, bound still in chains of stormlight. His scales were blackened, his coils unmoving, yet faint tremors ran through his body like the last echoes of thunder. Tarhunt stood over him, his chest rising and falling with the weight of battle. Lightning still flickered at his fingertips, though his power dimmed with each passing moment. He gazed upon the serpent, and though victory was his heart felt no triumph. For before him lay not merely an enemy, but the embodiment of chaos itself, the endless struggle that would never truly die. The gods drew near, their voices hushed. Some dared to whisper, "It is over." Others asked, "Has the serpent truly fallen?" But Tarhunt did not answer, for he knew Ilyanka was not yet finished. The serpent's eyes opened, glowing faintly with emerald fire. His voice rose in a hiss, cracked and broken, yet still defiant. "You strike me down, Storm God, but you do not end me. Chaos cannot die. I shall sink into the dark waters, into the veins of earth, into the shadows of men's hearts. When storms fade, I shall return." The words were not boast alone, they were prophecy. The gods shivered, for they felt the truth within them. Chaos, like the serpent, would coil again when balance faltered. Tarhunt's voice thundered in reply. "Then let your return wait until storm falters, serpent. Let the world know peace until that day." He raised his spear one final time. Lightning gathered at its tip, a blaze brighter than the sun. With a cry that shook heaven and earth, Tarhunt drove the spear into Illuyanka's skull. The serpent screamed, his roar echoing across the world, shattering cliffs and boiling seas. His body writhed once more, coils lashing against the ground, but the bonds held fast. Lightning coursed through him, searing every scale, burning every vein. His hiss grew weaker, his coils slackened, and at last his voice faded into silence. Illuyanka, serpent of chaos, was dead. The earth trembled as his body stilled. His vast form collapsed into the ground, sinking slowly into the depths. Mountains rose over his coils, rivers flowed over his fangs, and forests grew upon his back. His corpse became part of the world, a reminder that chaos was never destroyed, but only buried, hidden beneath the skin of creation. The gods stood in awe. Some wept, others cheered, but all felt the weight of what had passed. The storm god had triumphed, yet his victory was not lighted, was shadowed by sacrifice. Tarhunt lowered his spear, his eyes dim with sorrow. He turned his face to the heavens, and rain fell like tears upon him. He remembered his son, the youth who had carried stormlight within his veins, who had given his life so the storm might rise again. "Oh, my child," Tarhunt whispered, "your blood sealed this fate. Your sacrifice broke the coils of chaos. Without you, I would not stand here. May the winds carry your name forever." The gods heard, and in silence they bowed their heads. Even in victory, the storm god was a figure of grief, for no triumph is without its cost. Mortals, too, felt the shift. They had seen the battle from afar, the storm raging in the heavens, the earth shattering beneath the serpent's thrashing. They fell upon their knees in worship, raising their voices in prayer. "Hail, Tarhunt! Hail the storm god who has slain the serpent! May his reign guard us from chaos." And yet, in the hearts of some, fear lingered. For the serpent's final words whispered still, echoing like venom in the blood. Chaos cannot die. Tarhunt turned to his divine companions. The battle is ended, but our watch has not. Illuyanka's body lies beneath the earth, his spirit scattered to the dark. We must guard against his return, for chaos is eternal. The gods agreed. Together, they wove wards of power over the land, binding Serpent's essence within his corpse. They sang hymns of order, set stones of lightning across the earth, and sealed his name in forbidden tongues. The world sighed in relief, though its scars would never fully fade. When all was done, Tarhunt climbed to the highest peak. There he raised his hands, and the storm calmed. Clouds parted, sunlight streamed upon the earth, and for the first time since the serpent's rise, the world knew peace. But within that peace, Tarhunt felt only silence. The storm within him, though victorious, carried sorrow as deep as thunder. He had slain his enemy, yet he had lost his son. He had restored order, yet chaos would always lurk beneath. This was the burden of the storm god, the eternal struggle, the eternal watch. That night, as stars burned in the heavens, Tarhunt spoke alone to the wind. Let men tell this story. Let them remember the storm that rose, the serpent that fell, and the blood that sealed the fate of gods and mortals alike. Let them know that balance is not free, is bought with sacrifice. And let them never forget my son, whose light burned so the storm could return. The wind carried his words across the valleys, through the forests, over the seas, and into the hearts of men. And thus the tale was born, the tale of the storm god and the serpent, of battle and sacrifice, of order and chaos entwined. Illuyanka was dead, yet his shadow lingered. Tarhunt had triumphed, yet his heart was scarred. And so the world stood, balanced upon a knife's edge, knowing that storm and serpent would always meet again. Chapter 11. The morning of the storm god, the serpent, lay buried beneath mountains and rivers, his vast body woven into the fabric of the world. Illuyanka was no more, and peace spread across the earth. Yet, for Tarhunt, the victory was hollow. Where others saw triumph, he felt only silence, silence that echoed with the absence of his son. The storm subsided, the heavens cleared, and golden sunlight touched the valleys. Mortals sang praises, offering sacrifices of bread, wine, and oxen to the storm god who had restored balance. The gods themselves rejoiced, lifting hymns of triumph. But Tarhunt could not join their voices. His heart thundered, not with glory, but with grief. For though Illuyanka's body was slain, the cost of victory was carved into Tarhunt's soul. His son, his blood, his lightning had chosen death so that the storm might rise again. The boy's sacrifice was the price of triumph, and it left the storm god forever wounded. Tarhunt withdrew from the feasting of the gods. Alone, he climbed the peaks above the battlefield, where the wind cut sharp and the sky stretched endless. There he sat upon the stone, gazing at the horizon, and for the first time in memory, the storm god wept. Lightning flickered weakly in the clouds, thunder rolled like a dirge, rain fell upon the mountains, gentle as tears. The earth drank his sorrow, and the world grew quiet. Even the birds stilled their songs, as if mourning with him. The gods sought him. They came in procession, bearing torches of fire and garlands of laurel. Inanna, goddess of love and war, spoke first. Tarhunt, mighty one, why do you sit apart? The serpent is fallen, the world rejoices. Come, share in our victory. But Tarhunt shook his head. His voice was low, heavy as distant thunder. Victory. What victory is this, when my son lies cold? Chaos is slain, yet part of me is slain with it. The storm rages, but its heart is broken. Another god, the wise Kumarbi, laid a hand upon his shoulder. Great one, grief is the shadow of love. Your son's sacrifice has made the world whole. Should you not honor him with remembrance rather than silence? Tarhunt lifted his face to the sky. His eyes burned with lightning, though his cheeks were wet with rain. Yes, remembrance. His name must not fade. Let the gods and mortals know him. Let them speak of his choice. His light must burn forever, not vanish in the coils of time. Thus the gods agreed. They would weave rites of mourning and remembrance to honor not only the storm god's victory, but the blood that made it possible. They descended to the mortals and taught them sacred rituals. Each year, when the storms broke and rains fell upon the fields, men and women would gather in solemn ceremony. They would pour wine upon the earth, offerings for the fallen sun. They would sing hymns of thunder, not as triumph, but as lament. And in their prayers, they would say, "Blessed is he who gave his life, that storm might rise. Blessed is the sun, who bore lightning in his veins. Through his sacrifice, the serpent fell." Thus remembrance became eternal. Yet Tarhunt's grief did not ease, for even as the world praised him, he felt the emptiness beside him, the silence where once his son had stood. At night, when the winds howled across the mountains, he thought he heard the boy's voice calling from the shadows. He would rise, searching the valleys, but find nothing, only the whisper of chaos beneath the earth. One evening, Inanna returned, her eyes soft with pity. She spoke, "Great storm, do not let sorrow consume you. Your son's sacrifice was not in vain. Through him, you have restored order. Through him, the fields will bloom, the rivers will flow, the heavens will sing. Let his memory not chain you to grief, but lift you to purpose." Tarhunt listened, yet he did not answer, for his heart was a storm, without end, lightning for his rage, rain for his sorrow, thunder for his loss. In his mourning, the world changed. The rains grew softer, the winds less fierce. Storms no longer struck with blind fury, but with measured strength, as if the storm god himself had learned restraint through grief. Mortals noticed, and they said, "See how the storm weeps. It is the storm god mourning his son. Let us not curse the rain, for it is his tears. Let us not fear the thunder, for it is his voice calling to the dead. In every storm, he remembers." Thus sorrow became part of the natural order. Yet even in mourning, Tarhunt remained vigilant. He remembered Illuyanka's final prophecy: chaos cannot die. The serpent's spirit, though shattered, lingered beneath the world, coiled in silence, waiting for its time. So the storm god swore an oath, standing upon the mountain peak, with rain upon his face and lightning in his hands. He cried, "By the blood of my son, by the storm within me, I swear this: whenever chaos rises, I shall rise also. Whenever serpent coils, I shall break them. Eternal shall be my watch, and eternal my grief. For storm and chaos are bound, and neither may rest." The oath echoed across heaven and earth. The gods heard and trembled. Mortals heard and wept. Even the earth itself rumbled, acknowledging the vow. And so, though the world knew peace, it was peace shadowed by mourning. The storm god grieved, the gods remembered, and mortals carried the story upon their tongues. The serpent was dead, yet the struggle endured not in battle, but in memory, in vigilance, in sorrow. The storm had triumphed, but it would never be the same. Chapter 12. Legacy of Storm and Serpent. Generations passed, and the memory of the last battle faded into the folds of time. The mountains grew lush, where Illuyanka's coils had sunk into the earth. Rivers flowed clear, where his venom once blackened the waters. Mortals plowed their fields and sang their hymns, living beneath the shelter of peace bought at terrible cost. Yet, though years turned like the wheel of the seasons, the story endured. Around hearth fires, elders told the tale of the storm god's struggle. Poets recited verses of lightning and serpent. Priests led solemn rites when the rains came, offering wine to the earth, whispering prayers to the sun whose sacrifice had broken chaos. Children grew up knowing that every thunderclap was Tarhunt's voice, every drop of rain his tears, every storm cloud his eternal watch. Thus myth became memory, and memory became faith. Among the gods, too, the legacy endured. The divine assembly never forgot Illuyanka's last words: "Chaos cannot die." They knew the serpent's essence still slept beneath the skin of the world. So they remained vigilant, weaving wards, strengthening oaths, and watching the horizon for the first tremors of returning coils. But it was Tarhunt who bore the heaviest burden. The storm god, once radiant with unshaken fury, was now tempered by grief. He had slain his enemy, yet part of him had fallen in that victory. His storms no longer came with reckless violence. Instead, they carried balance, rains that nourished as much as they destroyed, winds that cooled as often as they tore. Mortals marveled at this change, saying, "The storm god has grown wise. Through sorrow, he has learned mercy." And in their words, Tarhunt found faint solace. Still, his heart never healed. Each time thunder rolled across the sky, he felt his son's voice within it. Each time lightning split the heavens, he saw the youth's bright eyes. The sacrifice remained, echoing in every storm. And so, though chaos was defeated, the storm god himself became a living reminder of the price of order. As centuries turned, the tale took root across lands far and wide. Some told it as a story of triumph, the storm god conquering the serpent, bringing peace to the world. Others told it as tragedy, a father losing his son to the coils of fate. Still others saw it as warning that chaos, though buried forever, lurks beneath creation, waiting for weakness to rise again. In each telling, the truth endured. The storm and the serpent were bound, neither able to exist without the other. Order and chaos, balance and destruction locked in eternal struggle. Mortals carved this truth into stone tablets and painted it upon temple walls. They raised shrines where thunder was loudest, offering prayers for balance in their lives. Farmers prayed for gentle rains. Sailors begged the storm to spare their ships. Warriors cried for the thunder's strength in battle. And always, beneath their prayers, was the shadow of Illuyanka, the fear that chaos might rise again. For though the serpent was slain, the world still knew chaos in wars, in famine, in storms that struck without mercy. And each time the world trembled, mortals whispered, "Illuyanka stirs." The gods, too, remembered. They watched as men quarreled, as kings waged war, as envy and greed poisoned the hearts of mortals. They saw Illuyanka's prophecy unfold in small ways, not as a serpent rising from the depths, but as chaos woven into the very souls of creation. Tarhunt understood, standing upon the highest peak, lightning crackling in his hand. He spoke to the heavens. The serpent is slain, yet chaos lives in men. My battle is not only with coils beneath the earth, but with shadows in the heart. Forever must I guard against it. Forever must I stand. His words became oath, and his oath became destiny. And so the legacy of the storm god and the serpent was sealed, not merely as a tale of gods and monsters, but as a mirror of the world itself. For in every heart, storm and serpent dwelt together, order and chaos, hope and fear, love and grief. The struggle was eternal, not only in heaven, but in every soul. In time, mortals came to understand this truth. When quarrels arose among them, elders would say, "Beware, for the serpent coils in your anger." When storms destroyed their fields, priests reminded them, "This is the morning of the storm god, not his wrath." And when peace returned, they said, "See, the storm has triumphed. Balance endures." Thus, myth became wisdom. And though Ilyanka lay buried beneath the mountains, though his corpse became part of the earth itself, his shadow never fully vanished. Each storm, each flood, each tremor reminded mortals that chaos cannot die. But each dawn, each harvest, each hymn of thunder reminded them also that the storm will always rise to meet it. So the tale lived on. The storm god and the serpent, father and foe, storm and chaos, grief and triumph. Their struggle became the heartbeat of the world, an eternal rhythm of destruction and renewal. And in the silence between thunder and rain, in the calm after storm, mortals whispered the name of the fallen sun, the one whose sacrifice had made all balance possible. His memory, carried on the winds, lived forever. The serpent's roar had faded, but the storm remained. And so long as clouds gathered, so long as lightning flashed, the world would know the legacy of storm and serpent, the eternal truth that order and chaos, though enemies, are bound as one.